So I have a comment from Wohlberg MS again. This once again is a very good question, and I'll go ahead and start. Revelation 12 verse 6, then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by not God but Elohim, that they should feed her there 1,260 days, 3.5 years. This sounds like how during the time of Moshe and Zerubbabel, how they led the Israelites out of captivity, and Elohim provided them with all their needs, food, water, clothing, and shelter, because I don't believe you can survive 3.5 years without any rain and not come with any issues. This might be nitpicking a verse, but would like to hear your thoughts. All right. So, a lot of the churches today think that the woman with the crown of 12 stars is the church. When they do that, listen to me carefully. When they do that, they are practicing supersessionism. Now, supersessionism has been practiced by the church, all the churches, since the Council of Nicaea. Supersessionism is the same sin that Paul warned the Romans about. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the words of Paul in Romans 11. We'll go to Strong's Concordance. And this whole chapter right here proves that the church could never replace Israel, ever. And when you go down here, and when it talks about the ingrafting of the Gentiles, starting in verse 11, I say, have they, Israel, stumbled that they should fall? Elohim forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is now come to the Gentiles, for to provoke Israel to jealousy. Now, if the temporary or the stumbling, it should not read, should the fall of them, it should be, if the stumbling of them be the riches of the Gentile world, and the diminishing of Israel be the riches of the Gentiles, how much more shall their fullness be? This right here, this one scripture right here proves that the Gentile Christians do not believe in Israel's fullness, because if they did, they would never practice supersessionism. Now, supersessionism and replacement theology are two different things, and I probably should go do a video on that sometime, the difference between supersessionism and replacement theology. For I speak to you Gentiles, because I am the apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my office. In other words, he's saying just because I'm the apostle to the Gentiles, it does not mean that I'm not going to speak to the Jews. If by any means I may provoke to emulation those which are of my flesh, and save some of them as well, in this particular generation where he is standing and talking to them. Because if the casting away of them in that generation is the reconciling of the Gentile world, what then shall the receiving of them be, if not life from the dead? So when you read Ezekiel 36, I believe it is, the prophecy of the dry bones, that's the whole house of Israel. And what the churches do, they say that is the resurrection of the dead. But if they would read the chapter, they would realize it is the bringing back of all Israel back to the Holy Land. Because if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are all 12 branches. Now if some of the branches were cut off, broken off, and you being a wild olive, you were grafted in among them, with them, by them, and partaking jointly with the root and the fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, because if you boast, remember this, you do not bear the root, but the root bears you. You will say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and you now stand by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. But what has the Gentile church done? They disobeyed the words of Paul and became high-minded. This idea then that the church is the woman with the crown of 12 stars is replacement theology, and it is rooted in high-mindedness. Now, what I want you to do, just to prove a point, I'm going to prove my point here. Let's go look at, the EU flag. Let's see what the Romans have done. You see this? This is a crown of stars. Let's count, shall we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The Ecclesia claim that they are the woman with the crown of 12 stars. I'll show you some more. So now they say, so there's all kinds of different narratives. What do the 12 crowns and Mary's stars and Mary's crown represent? Oh, they say that's Mary or Miriam. In a sense, it was Miriam. Now here we go, right here it says Mary is the archetypal symbol of the woman who is Israel originally, and the church developed. You see what they've done? That's replacement theology. Which originally was Israel, but now the church developed. That's replacement theology, folks. You see how devious this sentence was? You see how deceitful it was? Well, we just read here in Romans 11. You will say then that the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they of that generation were broken off, and you now stand by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear, because if Elohim spared not the natural branches at all, he won't spare you either. Look at the goodness and the severity of Elohim. On them which fell severity, but toward you goodness, if you continue in his goodness. And I declare right now, I am telling the truth when I tell you. I will hold up my right hand and tell you that the Christians spent the last nearly 2,000 years raping, pillaging, and murdering the Jews. Raping and pillaging and persecuting the woman with the crown of 12 stars. Now we go to Revelation 12. And there appeared a great wonder in the sky, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in the sky, and look, behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads were the Julio Claudius dynasty. That's who the 7 heads were. Okay? And the 10 horns, you can easily find them. It's the Sueve, Burgundians, Alemanni, the Anglo-Saxon kingdom, the Franks, yeah, Ostrogoths and Visigoths. You can find a list of them. I have pointed the list of them many, many times out. Okay? The great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars which are in heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be devoured, ready to deliver, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And yes, indeed, that was the Roman installed Herod did this. Now, I want you to understand, folks, that Roman installed governments in Israel are still Roman. What do I mean by this? Well, you can see here that Herod was Roman installed, therefore he was a minister of the dragon. The current government in Israel is no different. It is a Roman-style republic. I will continue. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And the child was called up to Elohim to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of Elohim, that they should feed her 1,260 days. This is a summary from the time that Miriam gave birth until the time of the very, very end. Verses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is the summary. Now, when we start with verse, and 6. When we start with verse 7, it gets into some details inside of that summary. Now, for a long time I've struggled with this, but I learned about it, I would say about 2-3 years ago, where I could find a match. And I did. There was a war in the sky. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his messengers, and prevailed not, neither was there found any place more in the sky. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. And he was cast into the earth, and his messengers were cast with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in the sky, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the power of his Moshiach. Come where? Come to the earth? No! Came to heaven. These, the devil and his messengers, were cast to the earth. Is there a place in the scripture at all that points to that? Well, there is one right here. In Jonah 14, verse 27, Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world gives unto you, I give unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You have heard how I said, I'm going away. He's going away. And what happens when he goes away? He'll show you what happens when he goes away. And I come back again unto you. If you love me, you would rejoice, because I said, I go to the Father. For my Father is greater than I. That's another truth that the Christians do not believe. And I've told you before, it comes to pass, that when it comes to pass, you might believe. Now, hereafter, no longer, no more will I talk with you much. Very little. And as you can see, the book of Revelation, actually, yes, the book of Revelation shows that, yes, Yehoshua talked very little, but he did speak with Paul and he did speak with Jonah. Right? Hereafter I will not talk much with you. Why? Why? For the prince of this world is coming. Coming from where? From heaven. Why? Because he's cast out. And he has nothing in me. What that means is, when Yehoshua came to the Father, there was the Satan's place in heaven was, how do I say this? He was evicted. He was evicted from his spot among the messengers of Elohim. All right? Neither was there place found any more in heaven for him. And he was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. The whole world. He was cast unto the earth, and his messengers were cast down with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation, or now is coming Yehoshua. Here comes Yehoshua, and strength, and the kingdom. Yehoshua is the kingdom of Elohim, and the power of his Moshiach, for the accuser of our brethren is now cast down, who accuses them before Elohim day and night. And who overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and did not love their lives unto death? It was the holy disciples. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you that dwell in them. Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil is come down upon you, having great wrath, because he knows that his time... Hold on. People have misconstrued this one as well. Let's see what it says. He has a few seasons. A short degree in spirit terms, or a while. He has only a while time. So what does he do? Well, the dragon enters into Caligula. As we all know, if we just read. And Caligula demands that his statue as Zeus be placed in all the synagogues in the realm, including the temple. That's when the persecution began. And it continued. It continued with the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. It continued after the Julio-Claudius dynasty ended. It continued and continued and continued for over 2,000 years. The woman who brought forth the man-child at this point, but not exclusively, is Israel. And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the desolate lands, as written in Isaiah the prophet, which means Israel, into her place, into her homeland, into the land of her fathers, her place. That's the Holy Land, where she is nourished for a time, times and half a time, away from the face of the serpent. What Miriam, see, at this point, the Miriam narrative no longer applies. Why? Because it says, when the dragon saw that he was cast into the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. We see right here that the man-child was caught up into heaven. So this happens after the man-child was caught up into heaven. Now, the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood. It's a figure of speech. In Daniel, it says the end will be with a flood. What does that mean? That he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. That would be, obviously, Joel 3. Read it in its entirety. The earth helped the woman, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Ezekiel 39 is another great example of that. This is a figure of speech, folks. How does the earth open up its mouth and swallow it? Well, there's a great earthquake in the land of Israel. And very likely more people in the Gog-Magog war will be killed by the great earthquake in the land of Israel. More Gentiles will be killed by the earthquake in the land of Israel than the war itself. More invaders will be killed by the great earthquake, by the hailstones falling from the sky, by the lightning bolts. And it will take 7 years to bury the dead. So yes, the earth will swallow them. After the birds of prey and the vultures are done picking their flesh. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Now I've heard the WWCG The Garner Ted crowd and all of them claim that that is the Laodicea church. Nope, that's not what that is. Who is the remnant of her seed? That keep the commandments of Jehovah and have the testimony of Yehoshua. If you want to know who they are, you go back to this chapter. Oh, wait a minute. You go back to, wow, what just happened here? You go back to chapter 11. All right? 3.5 years. These two witnesses, according to Isaiah 66, are responsible for the 3.5 years of no rain and all the plagues that are on the earth. They're also responsible for bringing all Israel back home. The messengers of, watch this. Let's go to, is it Matthew 24, I think? Now, remember this. In Daniel 12, it says that Michael, the great angel, is going to stand up, and there will be great tribulation upon the Gentiles in the last days. Now, just as Aaron and Moshe Moshe and Aaron led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, there will coming two witnesses that are going to bring plagues, the plagues of Moses and Aaron, upon the Gentiles. Verse 31, and he shall send his messengers. And the signal will be the great sound of the trumpet. So, what you're going to see is you're going to see immediately after Israel's not immediately. It says, but now, after the tribulation of those days, Israel's tribulation is ended, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, or the sun shall be dark and the moon shall not give her light. So we got to see, before the messengers are given power, before the two witnesses are given power, this has to happen. The sun be dark and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars falling, or the asteroids, fall from the sky, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. That has to happen first. Then the sign of the Son of Man in the sky happens. And then shall all the tribes of the earth be cut off. All of the cut off how? Well, according to Zechariah 14. And it appears that a nuclear exchange happens. All right? But they will be cut off, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of the sky. But one thing that we will know, we will see the sun and the moon be darkened, and asteroids falling from the sky. The powers of the sky will be shaken. This is going to be easy to see. This is not going to be a secret. But is Israel saved yet? No. Is there any rapture? No. Then the sign of the Son of Man comes. Anything happens yet? Not yet. All the tribes of the earth cut off? Not yet. Then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of the sky with power and great glory. And then the two messengers will be sent with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky and the other. You can go, and I'll go to Isaiah 66, which proves that. happened to Isaiah? There it is. Verse 19, I will send a sign. What kind of sign? The sign in heaven. Among them. And what happens next? When the sign comes, and then he's going to send fugitives. Palit, which means fugitives. Escaped one, fugitive. He's going to send fugitives. They're going to be hunting them. Who's going to be hunting those two fugitives? Let's go back to Revelation 12. Who's going to be hunting those two fugitives? Verse 17, and the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, who keep the commandments of Elohim, who have the testimony of Yehoshua Moshiach. Fugitives of the dragon, of the Mediterranean dragon, the Christian dragon, the Roman dragon. They will be hunting them down and not be able to find them until their work is complete, until the plagues of 3.5 years are finished. And there was given unto me a rod, reed like unto a rod, and the messenger stood at saying, Rise and measure the temple. Well, when Jonah was still alive, in those days, when he received this revelation, the temple was still working. Measure the temple and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is outside the temple leave out and measure it not, because it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread it under for 42 months. And in retaliation, he's going to give them power unto the 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth. That is 3.5 years. Now we go back to Revelation 12, and we see what? And to the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, times and a half a time, away from the face of the serpent. So, all Israel is going to be gathered. When all Israel is gathered, after 3.5 years of tribulation upon the Gentiles, and it says so right here, tribulation upon the Gentiles, it says in Luke 21, it says this, and there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars and upon the earth. Sunoke, that's tribulation upon the Gentiles. So there will be 3.5 years of tribulation upon the Gentiles. So when the 3.5 years is up, when they shall have finished, hold on. These are the 2 candlesticks standing before the Elohim of the earth. If any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth. They will call fire down from heaven, just like Eliah the prophet did, and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. They have the power to shut the sky, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, exactly 1,260 days, or 42 months, 3.5 years. And they have the power over the waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. once the 3.5 years is up, once their testimony is finished, and I suppose once all Israel is gathered in, and when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the Mediterranean Sea will make war against them. They will find them, they will overcome them, and kill them. Yes, they are fugitives, as it says in Isaiah. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street in the great city which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, that would be Rome, where, now it says where our Lord was crucified right here. But wait a minute. Hold on. Those of you who are well read, you know that he suffered outside the gate, which means outside the city. Hold on, I have to go find this. I hope I can find it. It's Paul said it. Look, Hebrews 13:12. It says, not Jesus. Let me go to Strong's Concordance so that we get the... All right. Wherefore Yehoshua, and a transliteration is not a translation, folks. Yehoshua also to make holy the people with his own blood suffered outside the gate. Outside the gate of the city. So now we see that Sodom and Egypt is not Jerusalem, it is Rome. All right. Where also our Moshiach was crucified. It probably ought to be whereby Moshiach was crucified. As you just witnessed, it was outside the city gate. And you can go look if you want to. I think if I go backwards here, hold on. I'll try that again. Outside the gate. Because there are other translations. Okay. For instance, the New Living Translation says, died outside the city gates. You see, so they know that it's outside the city gate. Right? Now, three and a half days, and all the people of the kindreds, tongues of the Gentiles. The kindreds and the tongues of the Gentiles shall see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves, and they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice and make merry, and send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Elohim entered in unto them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them, and they heard a great voice from the sky, saying, Come up here. And they ascended up to the sky in the cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And the same hour there was a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and the great earthquake, and in the earthquake were slain men 7,000, and the remnant, and the people of Israel, were affrighted and gave glory to the Elohim of heaven. Now, to finish up, what did I do here? All right. I will send a sign. It's a sign of the Moshiach among them. And I will send fugitives to the Gentiles. To who first? To Tarshish, the farthest points west, and farthest points west. To Tarshish first. Isaiah 60 says exactly the same thing. 60 verse 8 and 9. Tarshish, the ships of Tarshish first. Pool and Lud that draw the bow, to Tubal, to Greece, and to the coastlands afar off. That would be the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea, aka all of Rome, all of the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea. Not that I have not heard my fame, but no, to hear my fame, to see my glory. And they, those two witnesses, the fugitives, will declare my glory among the Gentiles. How? By 3.5 years of no rain and plagues of every sort, as often as they will. And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering unto Jehovah out of all the Gentiles. So the job of the two witnesses will be to bring all Israel back home. So when you read in Revelation 12 concerning verse 17, and the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Elohim and have the testimony of Yehoshua Moshiach. That would be the two witnesses. So Israel is no longer going to be the target. The 12 tribes of Israel will no longer become the target. They will not be allowed to be touched. The target will now then become the two witnesses. I hope this video has been helpful. When the days come, it will be obvious. It will not be as the churches claim, where people are just going to be plucked up out of the sky, out of the earth, and no one knows what's going on. You're going to know. You're going to know.